Hey everyone, welcome back. I am absolutely thrilled to be your guide today as we jump right into this explainer. We're unpacking one of the most fascinating and honestly consistently misunderstood regions on the entire planet. We're going on a huge spatial journey across the southern hemisphere. We'll be looking at Australia, the vast, incredible expanses of Oceania, and yes, we're even going to uncover a literal, hidden, submerged continent. If you've ever stared at a world map and felt kind of confused about where the continent ends and the islands begin, well, you are in exactly the right place.
Okay, let's dive into this. Because this right here is arguably the single most common geographic myth out there. It trips up students and adults alike all over the globe. When we look at that massive landmass sitting down there in the southern hemisphere, what are we actually looking at? I mean, is it a sovereign nation or is it a continent? Well, the short answer is, it's both. But the borders for those two definitions, they are totally different. Let's completely clear up this confusion right now.
Here is our roadmap for today's journey. First, we'll take the macro view. Second, we'll look at the hidden continent of Zealandia. Third, mapping the Australian mainland. Fourth, Oceania's fragile islands. And finally, we'll wrap it all up with a political study guide.
All right, let's start right at the top with Section 1, the macro view. It is time to properly define Australia and its surrounding waters.
So, when we talk about Australia, the country, we are talking about a massive, independent, sovereign state. This includes the main continental landmass, plus that little island of Tasmania down to the south. That is the political entity. But when geologists and geographers talk about Australia, the continent, the footprint actually expands. The continent includes the shared shallow continental shelf that connects the Australian mainland, Tasmania, and the island of New Guinea up to the north. So Papua New Guinea is politically its own entirely separate entity, but geologically, it shares a continental plate with Australia. Pretty wild, right?
Now, what about Oceania? You'll often hear Oceania and Australia used interchangeably, but honestly, that's a mistake. Oceania is not a continent itself, not at all. Rather, it's a vast geographic region. Think of it as a really convenient, broad regional classification used to group together the thousands, literally thousands, of islands floating out there in the Pacific Ocean for political, cultural, and geographic identification. It completely encompasses Australia, New Zealand, and countless other Pacific Island nations.
Speaking of New Zealand, let's shift our focus below the ocean's surface for Section 2, where we uncover a massive geographical secret.
For the longest time, New Zealand was just considered part of the broader Oceania region without its own proper continental home. But after decades of scientists mapping out variations in the ocean floor's gravity and looking at rock samples, this incredible journey of discovery finally revealed Zealandia. It's a real place. It meets all the strict scientific criteria to be a continent. It has its own distinct geology, a thick crust, and it sits elevated above the surrounding ocean floor. The catch? Well, 94% of this massive continent is completely submerged underwater. The highest peaks of this hidden landmass that actually break the surface of the water, those are the islands of New Zealand and New Caledonia.
Okay, let's bring our focus back up for air and return to the Australian mainland for Section 3. We're going to map out the country's borders and major coastal cities.
If you look at a globe, you're going to notice a strict geographical line cutting right across Australia. The Tropic of Capricorn bisects the Australian mainland almost perfectly in half, passing right near the central town of Alice Springs. And this is absolutely crucial because it dictates the climate zones of the entire country. It creates this tropical, really humid environment up in the northern half and a much more temperate, varied environment down in the southern half.
Politically, this massive country is neatly divided for administrative purposes. Australia is made up of 6 distinct states. You've got Western Australia, South Australia, Queensland, which is home to the famous Great Barrier Reef, by the way, New South Wales, Victoria, and the island state of Tasmania. It also has 2 major mainland territories, the Northern Territory and the Australian Capital Territory, which houses the nation's capital, Canberra.
Now, if you're a student or, honestly, just a map enthusiast, memorizing exactly where the major coastal cities are located can be super tricky. But our source material provides a wonderfully clever memory device. It's a total lifesaver for exams. We call it the Clockwise City Tour Mnemonic, BSc MA PhD. Think of a university degree progression, Bachelor of Science, Master of Arts, PhD. Let's see how this plots our cities perfectly around the coast.
So we start on the mid-eastern coast and move clockwise. First up is the BSc portion. B stands for Brisbane, up in Queensland. Moving south along the coast, S is for Sydney, that iconic harbour city in New South Wales.
And then, tucking just slightly inland from there, C is for Canberra, the capital city. Bam! That's your BSc.
Let's move 2 and see how this builds as we continue our clockwise journey along the southern edge and up the west coast. For our MA, PhD, M takes us to Melbourne in Victoria. A moves us west over to Adelaide in South Australia. P is for Perth, way out there on the western coast. H drops us down to Hobart on the island of Tasmania. And finally, D shoots us all the way up to the very top, to Darwin in the Northern Territory. BSc, MA, PhD, a perfect, neat clockwise loop of Australia's most vital hubs.
Now let's zoom back out from the mainland into the vast Pacific Ocean for Section 4. Oceania is absolutely massive, so geographers categorize these highly diverse island clusters into 3 main groups.
First up is Melanesia, located just north and northeast of Australia. This group includes countries like Papua New Guinea, the Solomon Islands, Vanuatu, and Fiji. Now, this is by far the most populous island group in Oceania. But what's truly staggering here is the incredible linguistic and cultural diversity. I mean, in Papua New Guinea alone, there are hundreds of distinct indigenous languages spoken. It's mind-blowing.
Next, we have Micronesia. A really great way to remember these nations is the mnemonic CAMPON. That's Kiribati, the Marshall Islands, the Federated States of Micronesia, Palau, and Nauru. The source material uses a brilliant linguistic trick here. The word campan actually translates to tremble or vibrate in Hindi. And man, this perfectly describes these geographically fragile atolls. These islands are so tiny, and they sit so incredibly low to sea level that they literally tremble and vibrate with slight ocean movements. They are incredibly vulnerable to rising sea levels.
Finally, we look at Polynesia, this massive triangle of islands stretching far, far out into the eastern Pacific. The political makeup here is uniquely contrasted. On one hand, you have independent Polynesian nations with their own sovereignty, like Tuvalu, Samoa, and Tonga. On the other hand, due to some really complex colonial histories, you have overseas territories. So, for example, Hawaii is a U.S. state, and French Polynesia is an overseas collectivity of France. This means the residents in those territories actually hold U.S. or French passports respectively.
So, the crucial point is this number right here, 14. Despite the sheer, mind-boggling geographical size of the Oceania region, I'm talking covering millions of square miles of the Pacific Ocean and thousands upon thousands of individual islands, there are actually only 14 officially recognized independent countries in this entire watery expanse.
We have covered a tremendous amount of ground and ocean today. Let's move right into our final section and consolidate everything we've learned into one ultimate cheat sheet. And this brilliantly illustrates exactly how all these terms fit together in the giant puzzle of the Pacific. You've got Australasia, grouping Australia and New Zealand. You have Zealandia, that submerged continent hosting New Zealand and New Caledonia. You have Melanesia, with its high populations and incredible diversity, Micronesia, with its fragile, trembling atolls, and Polynesia, with its mix of independent nations and overseas territories. This table right here is your absolute master key to understanding the political map of the region.
We have journeyed from the arid outback of Australia, bisected by the Tropic of Capricorn, all the way down into the submerged depths of Zealandia and across the trembling atolls of Micronesia. You now have the tools to look at a world map not with confusion but with absolute clarity. So I'll leave you with this provocative thought. With the map finally deconstructed, which of these hidden geographic marvels will you explore next? Keep that curiosity alive, keep looking closely at the map, and I'll see you in the next explainer.